live from San Juan, California. We've got live with the logistics captain. Thank you for the applause. I am here. I am your logistics captain, and I am ready to educate you on the glorious and informative and amazingly entertaining art of note taking. Oh man, ooh, that one almost came up. Some note taking. All right, so with the enthusiasm now having died down once I opened my mouth, we are going to be talking about how to properly take notes in a debate round. This is important for both the first and second speaker, however, it is vastly more important for the second speaker. Because the entirety of the second speaker, all of the content they are going to be saying is directly related and directly resulting from how well they take notes. So, let's get into it. I had a little bit of spaghetti. Now I'm pretty energetic. Alright, so taking notes. Alright, so the main things you want to take notes on. Alright, and keep in mind, you have to write fast. Alright, if you want to take notes on a computer or a legal pad. Legal pads, it is much easier to organize your thoughts. However, you are not going to have as much time to record your thoughts as you will on a computer, as computers are significantly faster to it's faster to write than type, or it's faster to type than write, unless if you got some like wicked crazy hands. All right, so if you record notes on a computer, which I would recommend recording notes for a computer on a computer for first speaker. Second speaker needs to have a legal pad. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to take your notes in chronological order. You can't comment on your notes, you can't organize your notes, you simply record them, and you have to keep that in your head while you present what order you want to deal with them. However, okay, while this is easier, this is not as effective as doing a legal pad, because a legal pad, you can actually do stuff with them. So, um, since I do not have a webcam, since I don't have a projector or something, I cannot show you what my notes look like. But I always take notes on a legal pad. And what you do is you write your notes down and you have to organize them into points for your impromptu speeches. So, um, I am going to be covering what you need to look for while you take notes and how you organize your speech with your notes. All right, and all right, so let's begin. And also, if you don't believe note taking is important, you don't have to take my word for it. But just know this: if you go into a round and you take very bad notes versus a round where you take good notes, your performance will drastically um, differ. Like, notes are incredibly important, and you should never underestimate the power of good notes. Okay, so beginning with what to look out for. All right, so you want to write down the main gist of definitions and framework. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to write down how they are defining things. Now, how they are defining things is really helpful in crossfires, okay? But typically you're not going to have the ability to actually record the entire definition. So a good trap in Crossfire that you can do with definitions is you write down the main gist of them, okay? So so you pretty much just like kind of paraphrase what they're saying, and then in Crossfire, you ask them to define a term, and then you ask for a follow-up question so that you can compare it. So they can like have some wacky definition for a word, and you can say, so like let's say they define happy as this, okay? So you ask them to define it, they define it as such, and so you are like, okay, how does that definition pertain to this specific point you mentioned within your first contention? Okay, now this is why notes are so important, because without notes, you don't know to look for the definitions, and without notes, you don't know that there's a point in the first contention that you need to mention. Because while it seems like you can keep everything in your head, when you're in a debate round, your mind is constantly spinning, especially if you are a second speaker. Because as a second speaker, you are constantly reorganizing and creating your speech in your head. And so things will very, very easily be lost if they are not recorded. Okay? So, with framework, you simply would just want to get the main idea. So like a very common framework people will provide is, just to save time too, is we provide a basic cost benefit analysis framework. Okay, so you just write that down. So you just write cost benefit analysis, whatever, and guess what? Now you know how they're basing their speech, so you have that information at will. Okay, so something you should do, especially if you have, well, this works for a computer too, is you want to structure your notes like you just want to structure your notes into a flowchart. So you want to have a framework section. You want to have definitions. Then you want to have the contentions. You want to label them, and then you just put their points. Okay. So you just try and flow as good as you can. Now the people over at West, they like to flow horizontally. So they go like this. Okay, so they start like that. That way they have more room to write. I, however, like to go vertically, so I like to, just a little bit of, oh no, yeah, I like to go up and down. Um, I find that going vertically rather than horizontally is a lot easier, just in terms of reading it, in terms of writing. It's just more comfortable for me. It may not work for everybody, but just find whatever works for you. Something you can also do, but this might be a little difficult, is you can go and get a multicolored pen. Okay, so um, multi ink pen. Okay, so you can get one of these. All right, so back like when you were in elementary school, it's the pens with 50 different colors. So you can get one of these, and so you can write different notes in different colors so you know what to look for. Now this is very difficult because you're not always going to have time to constantly switch. But it's worth trying. You can see I put a lot more effort into this video. Okay, so so you want to list points. You always want to listen for impacts. Okay, impacts are more important than points because as a second speaker, you are weighing those. All right. So as a second speaker, the impacts will infinitely be more important to list than points because what's going to happen is points do not matter unless if they are quantifiable. Impacts are quantifiable points. So this is minor league. This is big league. Okay, so as a second speaker, or just not even as a second speaker, just as a debater, when you're taking notes, if you don't have time to write everything down, try and list the impacts before you list the points. Okay, so you just pretty much go down a standard flow sheet. So contention one. So contention one. Okay, now they finish their speech. Oh no. Okay, so now we move on to guess what it is? Crossfire. So here's how you want to list your crossfire. You want to do Q A. Okay, so typically you just want to write down the question. Okay, so if it's your partner, you want to write down. So if your partner is asking the question, you want to write down your opponent's response. If your opponent is asking a question, you want to write down their question. So let's say that your partner asks like, "Why are you so dumb?" Okay, and so you're not gonna write down "Why are you so dumb?" All right, you want to try and so you just want to write down maybe like one word out of this so that you can remember what the question was. but you want to try and write down as much as the answer as possible. So you're like, yeah, it's like my mother's milk while pregnant. So that way, you know, hey, why is my opponent being such a mongoloid? That's why, because yeah. All right, and so vice versa. So let's say your teammate. So let's say that this is your teammate. Okay, so boom. All right, so let's say that this is your teammate. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to record the question. So why are you so ugly? So then like this. So um yeah. So you want to write down like in these circumstances you want to write down like so if your partner is asking a question, write down your opponent's answer. If your opponent or if your partner is responding to a question, write down the opponent's question. This will just help you because, at least in my experience, you will remember what your partner says more than you will your opponent. And even then, you're just gonna like write down one question or like one word. So, like so for example, this one you're just gonna write dumb. Like why dumb? And then for answer, you're gonna try and write as much of it as you can. Same thing. Like it's better looking, okay? And then why are you so ugly? So it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. All right. Moving on. Moving on. We will. Okay, so now during the crossfires, you do that. Next after this is you want to. Okay, you want to start recording the. You want to start recording your opponent. So if you are a second speaker, you want to record your opponent as much as possible because since crossfire, um, yeah, crossfire is coming up. You just want to ask as much as possible, especially for second speakers. You want to have oh, sorry. Sneeze. Okay, so for second speakers, you want to record as much of the first speeches as you can, so that you have as much to work with as possible, and then you want to record as much as your opponents as possible, so that you can ask questions. Um, Honestly, what I usually do, is I will write the questions down as they come to me. So when I take notes, so instead of just kind of, so I'll list points, but as questions come to me, I'll write down like, um, if you say, oh, golf, goldfish. Okay, so let's say something like this. So like I'm taking notes, blah 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 blah, and then a question comes to me because the opponent made a mistake, or I see something that I can maybe capitalize on. I'll write down the question. I'll keep going. Okay, so I write down the question. All right, and then keep taking notes. Keep taking notes. Make sure you don't have to write the question down word for word. You just have to make sure that once you get up for Crossfire, you understand what you need to ask. Okay, because this is incredibly important. If you run out of questions in Crossfire, it makes you look incredibly weak because it makes it look like you don't have anything to say about your opponent's case, which validates their argument more than yours. Um, and then for summary, you just want to okay. So an important rule to remember for summaries and final focuses, okay, is that the final focus can only mention stuff from the summary downwards. Okay, so yeah, so your summaries can only focus on things that were covered in or your final focuses can only cover things that were mentioned in the Grand Crossfire or the summary. So it's important when taking notes for your final focus that you understand or that you write down each of your partner's points so that you know what you have to work with. Um, and then as for taking notes for summary, you simply just want to record rebuttals and crossfires. It's pretty standard stuff. Um, and that is pretty much it for note taking. That was only 15 minutes long. I am fine with that. If you have any questions on note taking, feel free to ask. I can show you some of my old notes if you so request. Make sure you write fast though. And also make sure that your handwriting is decent because you will be passing notes to your partner. So make sure that what you write is legible. That is all. And yeah, I will be putting out more videos. Just make sure you watch them as they come out so that you understand more about the beat.